Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks, the big interview. My name's Mark Owen, and today my special guest is Boris Worrall. He's the Chief Executive of Rooftop Housing Association. Thanks ever so much for joining us, Boris.
Pleasure to be here. Really happy to be chatting to you.
Well, it's pretty exciting. The reason why you're here today is actually because you've just signed a deal with Gloucester City Council for 300 homes to be on the back or built on the back behind the Tesco and St Oswald's Park. So let me just go to the screen a second. I can quickly bring up a map that I've got here. Where is it? There we go. Right. So if I bring it all up here a bit closer, there's our fantastic King's Own Stadium.
Yeah.
And the site that we're talking about is opposite Gilman's and St Oswald's. There's B&Q. Yeah. There's Tesco. And it's this site here, isn't it, behind there?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's I think it's is it a county council car park or something at the moment? I think it's mainly used.
Well, I went down there recently, and it's obviously just bramble and covered in rubbish and all the rest of it. And I must admit, going back, when the council bought this land for quite a considerable amount of money, B&Q in the park, I must admit, I was like, that's a bit steep. But I think they bought it all for what you guys are going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think this site is, I think, is allocated provisionally for housing in the long-term plan. So we're going to need to get a planning permission on it over the next, let's hope, 12 months. But we're absolutely delighted to be bringing new homes for rent, for shared ownership, and there'll be homes for private sale in what is a fantastic location. I mean, you know the site. You go onto the site, you can see the cathedral there. You've got the river just over the way. You can kind of walk into town and past the park there. And of course, we've got St Oswald's, the extra care scheme. We've got some properties kind of around the corner as well. So, you know, this is a big project for us. It's been a long road. You know, this is a difficult site to develop. You know, brownfield sites are difficult, and that's why it's been effectively, you know, pretty much derelict for, you know, a couple of decades. You know, we'll probably get into the detail a bit later on, but there's a lot of people who've had to move a lot of stuff to get this deal done. You know, the commitment from various people in the city, the council, the MP, Tesco's, who own some of the land, has been phenomenal. And it's taken that level of effort and that level of partnership and trust and hard work to get a really tricky site over the line. And I will say this now, this is only the start. We've got to get planning, and we've got a kind of a long way to go, but it's great to get this over the line. I'm really thrilled. And so I'm thrilled for the city actually as well.
I totally agree with you. I think, you know, it is a prime site, and once it's all cleaned up, it could be such a fantastic asset. And a lot of people don't really go to that part of the town because why should they? You know, because it's sort of tucked away behind Tesco. Like I said, it's all sort of brambles and it's not too just, you know, desirable. But no, it's really quite clever. And so have you got it mapped out already, the sort of layout or scheme itself and the type of houses that you're looking at?
Yeah, so we've produced a sort of vision document about a year ago, which started to look at potential layouts, allocation of open space, streetscapes, that kind of stuff, because, you know, we want to create something with the council that we're all really proud of and that's going to really add value. And, you know, we were chatting a bit earlier, weren't we, about kind of how Gloucester City has really started to move up in the last decade or so. And, you know, we want to be part of that and create a legacy here for the city and for local people that we're all proud of. You know, the way planning works, we'll start to hone that down. We'll procure a partner, a developer to work with us, and the devil of the detail will come through that kind of process in terms of, you know, exact numbers and locations and all that sort of stuff. But got a good idea about the kind of vision we want to create, and it's now going to be about fleshing that out and doing some of the detailed work. Now we've got the land deal over the line.
Because I read that, well, I read our own story that this is actually the biggest development that you guys have ever done. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's right up there. I mean, St Oswald's opposite is pretty big, but that's obviously a sort of a single building scheme. In terms of a single site with multiple homes on it, this is a pretty big deal, and it's going to stretch us. But we're absolutely confident in our ability with a good development partner to execute this. And create something that we're all really happy with in a few years to come.
Now I know you guys are based in Evesham, but what caught my eye and drew me to your company itself is the fact that you did the work on Black Dog Way. Let's have a quick look at this. This is as it was developing. This is the 93. It was £14.6 million development, 93 apartments. It was on the old Quick Save site, which was a complete and utter mess. And you guys now have transformed it. Unfortunately, I haven't got a picture of what it all looks like, but most people going along that way will recognize it instantly. And it must have been a tricky build as well, because again, it was quite a derelict site.
Yeah, so this was a challenging site for a number of reasons, not least that it's quite a tight site. Access was a challenge, cost was a challenge. And just before my time, our board backed it, in terms of the financial parameters. We're not for profit, but, we borrow from the markets, and we've got to, stuff's got to stack up. We get funding from Homes England, who've been phenomenal, and the support from the city's been great. But yeah, this was not an easy site. But you know what? That's what housing associations are there to do, to pick up your Black Dog Ways and your St Oswald's Parks, where there isn't enough profit in it for the private sector to fly solo, and that's where we can come in and make stuff happen with a bit of backing from government and the city.
Now, you also done some other stuff. It's not just obviously these big ones. We've got this site here in Bishop's Cleeve as well. We did 30 houses too.
Yeah, I mean, we're basically building new homes to pretty high spec, generally Band A energy ratings. You can see the solar on the top there, high levels of insulation, trying to eradicate fuel poverty in new build. We're very active in Gloucester and North Gloucestershire. We've done a number of smaller schemes with the diocese, who've been a brilliant partner for us. Taking on land or plots which aren't really required by the church these days, and transforming them into affordable housing. We've probably delivered about 6 or 7 sites in the last few years in Gloucester City and North Gloucestershire. So it's an area we're really committed to. Obviously we've got a little office in St Oswald's, the extra care scheme as well. I'm a regular visitor, and as I mentioned before when we were chatting, I've come to know and kind of love the city and the county, and personally and professionally delighted that we're going to bring several tens of millions of pounds of investment into the city, but also address the housing crisis, which is really acute at the moment, as we know. So I honestly believe this is a win for the city and a win for Rooftop. It's been a while coming. It's complicated.
It's telling me anything to do. What is so great about Gloucester at the moment is there is so much stuff going on. We've got the new forum. I was around there yesterday at the very top of the building. I was showing people around there, or being shown around. Amazing. We've got the Baker's Quay. We've got obviously the new Debenham. Debenham's being formed into a university. Wherever you look, there's stuff going along the train tracks, along the train tracks as well. That derelict land on the triangle, that's being done up as well. I don't know if you know, but I used to be a director of the Urban Regeneration Company.
Right, yeah.
So for me personally, it's just fantastic to see this coming out. Of course, then you come along as well and doing Black Dog Way and at the back of Tesco. It's just another piece in the jigsaw for Gloucester.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm with you. I've come to sort of experience Gloucester as a city, and you're right. The quayside and all of that. I'm kind of from Birmingham, so brilliant to see the Gloucester equivalent of Brindley Place and all that canal redevelopment. It's slightly different in Gloucester, but it's the same kind of feel. And I think it brings that sense of vibrancy and modernity, and a sense that, you know, the city's got such brilliant assets. You know, the cathedral, I love it. I pop in there often and have a quiet moment. You know, I love it, and it's great to be part of a city that's moving forward. It really is, genuinely.
One of the things Punchline is, you know, obviously an advocate and champion for businesses. So I've got to ask you really about, you know, how you get your local suppliers. Will you go to the guys on your doorsteps to fulfill this? You know, we'd like you to use local contractors as much, or subcontractors as much as possible. Is that part of the ethos of Rooftop?
It is part of the ethos. So generally, we tend to use mid-range contractors. There's a number of reasons for that. One is because they tend to be locally based. The other is that there's a balance between, you know, your big 5 or 6 and kind of your one-man bands, and that sweet spot is in the middle, where they tend to be local, or if they're not local, they tend to be regional. And they're generally going to be using, all of them are generally going to be subcontracting or using local people to do a lot of the work. On a scheme of this scale, we've got to hit some challenging financial parameters, and we need organisations with the capacity to be sure they're going to deliver. So there's going to be a competitive process, but wherever we can use kind of local and regional, we tend to go down that route.
Okay. Can you tell us a bit more about Rooftop then? Because I don't know very much about the company itself. How many people do you employ? What's the sort of turnover?
Yeah.
You know, I know you're based in Evesham. When did it start? I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, so we'll be 30 next year. So we've been around for a while. We're what we would describe as very place-based. So we're kind of rooted in North Gloucestershire and South Worcestershire. Our heritage is in the neighbouring sort of districts of Wychavon, but we've grown in Tewkesbury. We own quite a lot of property, quite a lot of homes in Bishop's Cleeve, another place I really like, and a lot of our new development has been in the city of Gloucester. We've got a turnover of around about 45 million. We've got 180 staff. We're a not-for-profit, but we operate like what you might describe as a social business, so very values orientated, and we're kind of here to do the things that the private sector don't want to, and maybe the public sector haven't got the ability to do. So we fit in that middle strata of business and public, you know, kind of hybrid sort of an organisation. Obviously, government backing is really important for us, and we're really grateful to Richard Graham, who's a great friend of ours, great advocate for us, who was supportive in helping the council secure brownfield remediation funding for this site, which is necessary.
How much was it?
I think it's in the public domain. Off the top of my head, it's £1 million or so. It might be a bit more than that. But that gives you a sense of the scale of the risk and the difficulty of these sites. I mean, I think it was a former cattle market at one point. And, I'm not a development person particularly, but, my experience is whenever you start digging into sort of urban sites, you can find all sorts of stuff underneath there. So that is going to be a focus for the next six months or so to get on with that and get that land in a state ready.
I often think for you guys, when you start digging up the land and suddenly you find a Roman village or something and the whole thing just stops, it must be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, and we have found that a bit before my time. I'm pretty sure that on one of our developments we kind of found the remains of a Roman centurion in Worcestershire somewhere, and you're going to have the same potential problem in Gloucester, aren't you, with all the history and the heritage, and we could unearth all sorts of treasures
or something.
Yeah, you probably will, and with any luck, we'll find a treasure trove, and that'll help mitigate some of the cost. See what we get, but you never quite know, and that's where that remediation money comes in handy, and that's where that's one of the reasons why it helps de-risk a project like this, because as soon as you start digging underneath, it could be anything under there, really, to be honest. But whatever there is, we'll deal with it, and we'll get it sorted.
So how long have you worked for Rooftop, and what sort of, where did you come from?
Right, yeah, right. Well, we could take up a whole half an hour on this, but I'll try and do it in a couple of minutes. We'll try and do it in a couple of minutes. So I joined Rooftop 6 years ago, and I was previously working for a very large housing association called Orbit, and then before that, I worked for another housing association, and before that, I worked in criminal justice. I worked on miscarriages of justice, and I worked for the British equivalent of the FBI, called the Serious Crime Agency. And way back when I was a young man, I was a journalist. So I've had a very lucky and interesting career. It's a long and winding road, but it's certainly been an interesting one.
Well, let's hear about it then, because let's go back to where are you from originally? Are you from Gloucestershire?
Well, yeah, okay. So I was born in Berlin to a German mother and an English father, and came to England as a baby. And I'm basically a West Midlands person.
Sorry, can I just stop you? Whereabouts in Berlin? Because I lived in Berlin for 3 years when I was a kid.
Oh wow, phenomenal!
And my mother was German as well.
Oh wow, yeah, amazing coincidence. Yeah, so I was the British sector, so Charlottenburg, basically. Near tube station would be Tidderhoitsplatz, and actually, as a kid, I remember going past the British Army Navy store on the way to get the bus into town. And back in those days when the wall was up, you'd see British soldiers, regularly, particularly in that sector, actually. And I've still got relatives out there. In fact, I'm just planning with one of my mates to go and see Hertha Berlin in the autumn, and I get over there usually once a year, every couple of years.
What year was that when you lived there?
So I was. You're making me disclose my age. I was born in 1970, and we used to spend. My grandparents lived there until they died, so we used to spend our summer holidays there, and go in swim in the Olympic Stadium outdoor pool and all that sort of stuff. So spent a lot of my younger years, traipsing around, looking at the wall, getting the tube under the old stations into East Berlin. Absolutely phenomenal place.
Yeah, I went through Checkpoint Charlie myself. I was straight into the Berlin Wall. My dad was stationed at RAF Ghetto, and so I went to school. So it was one of the best times of my life. 16-year-old kid, drinking Steins and stuff. Anyway, it's not about so we can talk about that another time. So you kind of came out for Germany. How did you get into? Was it journalism then? Was it?
Yeah. So my granddad, who was German, was a journalist at the time of the Nazi takeover of government. So he was a reporter in Dresden at the time. So I guess I kind of inherited a kind of interest in journalism, and then I did work experience at 16 on a local paper here, and then I did my degree. And then I did a postgraduate in newspaper journalism, got a job on a local paper, and I did that for about 10 years. And I ended up working for a big newspaper called the Birmingham Evening Mail, and I was the crime correspondent there for a while. I did a bit of work in London on nationals, shifting and stuff like that. And then I got into kind of journalism. Paper journalism at that time was starting to become a difficult profession. The money was running out, circulation was falling. And at that time, I had a choice really, which was go to London and, kind of go all in on Fleet Street or do something else. And I got approached about a job with the police as a comms manager. And that was when I ended up working for the National Crime Squad, which I could write a book about. It was like working in a James Bond movie. I kid you not. It was absolutely crazy.
What year was this?
So this would have been about the 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. I switched from crime reporting to media relations in the police. And I did that for about 3 or 4 years. And then I worked for a Home Office agency called the Criminal Cases Review Commission, which was also a bit like working in a movie, because it was reviewing miscarriages of justice, like the Jill Dando case, among others, Barry George, and some other big sudden infant death syndrome cases, and dealing with a lot of regional and national press on big Court of Appeal judgments. So that was absolutely, that was incredibly interesting. Going into prisons and talking to prisoners about their rights to appeal and all of that sort of stuff. It was a real eye opener. Phenomenal, actually.
Got it. And so how did you then do that leap to what you do now?
Yeah, so that's a real happen chance thing. So I was working for the Criminal Cases Review Commission, and one of the board members asked me about getting a job description for a head of comms. He said, you'd know what that needs to look like. So I said, yeah, I'll do that for you. So I did a bit of research, and in doing the research, I spotted a job for a head of comms, and at a housing association. And I thought, well, that looks interesting. I'll apply for that. And to my surprise, I got the job. And then I developed my career and became more of a sort of a strategy director kind of a role. Got involved in sort of business planning and corporate life, and then just sort of moved up through the sort of leadership ranks in the housing association world, which is a really fascinating sector. And while we're on, I'd encourage anybody who wants an interesting career to have a look at housing associations. They're really interesting businesses, run like businesses, but designed to deliver social outcomes.
Wow. And then what year did you start at Rooftop? You said 6
years. 6 years ago. So that would be 2017, wouldn't it? And I now know that I was a naive first-time chief exec, and I'm not sure I would employ one of those myself. But the board did, and so far so good. I haven't broken it yet, although we've been close on one or two occasions, I guess. I got to a point in my career where I started to become interested in organisations and leadership, and sort of business, if you like, business leadership and culture and things like that. So Rooftop's given me a wonderful career, and lots of challenges, but also brilliant experiences.
Well, unfortunately, we're kind of running out of time already. Would you
It's
believe?
gone really quick.
I've got to ask you. I always ask everybody, actually. So, or different sorts of questions. So, I'll ask you first of all, what's the last book that you read?
The last book I read, right. So I'm reading. I can tell you the two books I'm reading at the moment. So one is the Bible. I was recently confirmed as a Christian, so that's quite important to me, and it helps guide me in my business life as well. And the other one is a German crime novelist, because I read in German. Generally fiction, I read all in German just to keep my language skills going.
Wow.
So they're not particularly that's not particularly inspirational, but it's true.
No. And what sort of music do you like? So if I don't know, got in your car with you and you turned on the, put your CD player in or whatever, what would we playing?
So, well, there's 3 playlists available to you, Mark, on my Spotify playlist. So one is indie mainly from the 90s. One is pop from mostly the 90s, but I do mix it up with some modern stuff as well. And then the other one's kind of like running stroke rock, which is that could be anything from Frankie Goes to Hollywood to Kasabian. So it's a pretty wide brief. There's a bit of De La Soul and things like that in there as well. So I'm sure we'd find something you liked.
I'm sure. Been an ex-Boomtown Rats fan, or Boomtown Rats fan. Latest album is really good, by the way. Anyway, I've got to ask you, because we are running out of time, what are your top 3 business tips, please?
I'd like to give you 5, but you're going to hold me to 3. So I'll give you 3, and they might sound a little bit basic, but the first one is blindingly obvious, but work hard and do the detail. And by that I mean don't cut corners. It's the hard yards, it's the hard work, it's knowing the detail that matters. And in my experience, that's the difference between the best CEOs and the best directors and the people who either don't quite get there or the people who struggle at that at those senior levels. You cannot underestimate the benefit of working hard, and there's no substitute for it. The second one is at the opposite end of the spectrum, really, and it's kind of believe in yourself. And you know, when I sometimes give career advice to others, not very often, but when I'm asked, I say to people, you know, I wish I'd believed more in myself earlier. Now, belief comes from experience, of course it does, but you know, believe that you can, and be confident, not cocky. Nobody wants that, but self-belief is really really important. And I think the third one is about you might call it kind of do the right thing, and by that I mean be kind. Be as kind as you can. You know, I make difficult decisions, sometimes horrendously difficult decisions, and sometimes they're not pleasant to execute, but I do it. I always do it in the kindest way I can, and in the most ethical way I can, because when you're faced with difficult choices, which you are every week in business, I think having a kind of a moral commitment is really important. And I really believe that, you know, if it's money that is the objective, or whatever the outcome is, if you do the right thing, that should follow. So you know, don't chase the money, chase the dream, trace the vision, and the money will come. So I think doing the right thing is personally really important to me in business.
Unfortunately, it's a nice place to stop. And that's all we've got time for today. Boris, thanks ever so much for joining Punchline Talks today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed it. The time's gone so fast, it always does. Thanks for joining Punchline Talks.
Loved it. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you. If you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. Cheers. Bye.